County and all the surrounding counties very well. With that, I'll turn it over to Maayan Johnson.
You can hear me, court reporter, a little bit? Oh dear. Okay, now it's on. All right, thank you everyone for your patience. I'm Maayan Johnson. For those who don't know me, I run the RHNA hotline, so you've probably seen my email or have already talked to me on the phone. So thank you everyone very much for coming in today for the RHNA public hearing. This is the third one out of 4 that we're offering, and we'll also have a public information session as well next week. So also in the interest of time, this presentation is usually about over 30 minutes, but I know a lot of you want to comment. So what I'm going to do is keep it on the conceptual level, and I'll go through one example, but we're here to hear your comments as well. So if you do have questions specifically on the methodology, after this presentation, you can come see me, or you can send me an email, or give me a call. So we want to make sure all of you do have time today to comment. So I always start off the purpose of RHNA. The RHNA need represents existing and projected housing need for the planning period. So as mentioned before, that's October 2021 through October 2029. But the housing crisis was not something that happened overnight. So you can see between 1970 and 1980, for every 1 new unit added to the SCAG region, 1 new housing unit, there was 1.74 persons added to the population. But between 1990 and 2000, this ratio had dropped. 1 new unit for every 4.5 persons added to the population. So our population kept increasing, but the number of housing units added were not. So while the past few years, this ratio has improved, 1 new unit for every 3.32 persons added, what this means is that we have a lot of unmet need out there. This housing crisis, has been a cumulative problem. So what you see today at the state level, the regional level, and the local level, all of that has been built up over decades. So very briefly, there are 5 objectives of RHNA, and our methodology, whatever we adopt. So today we're just talking about the 3 options and any other factors, comments on them, or alternative options. But whatever we select as our final methodology has to further these 5 objectives. And by extension, our final RHNA plan allocation has to meet these objectives or further these objectives as well. So the first one is to increase the housing supply and mix of housing types, tenure, and affordability within each region in an equitable manner. Number 2 is to promote infill development and socioeconomic equity, along with protecting environmental and agricultural resources. The third one is promoting an improved intra-regional relationship between jobs and housing. And the fourth one, allocating a lower proportion of housing need in income categories where they're already over-concentrated. So we're trying to avoid giving jurisdictions more of the same, particularly for jurisdictions that have a high percentage of lower income households. The fifth one is new for this cycle. It's known as Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing, or AFFH. This is modeled after the HUD definition, which in a nutshell basically means that we're not perpetuating historical segregation patterns based on protected classes. And also we need to further access to fair housing across all community groups. So brief overview of the RHNA process. We will receive a regional determination, hopefully in the next coming weeks, from HCD, the California Department of Housing Community Development. They give us a regional numbers. This is by all 4 income categories for the region. Once they give us that number, we apply a methodology to that. And so that's why we're here today, to go towards developing a final RHNA methodology. The methodology is applied to the regional number, and that's how you get individual draft allocations. Once we have the draft allocations out of early next year, there'll be an appeals process, and then we'll adopt our final RHNA allocation in October of next year, and you'll have about another year to develop and adopt your local housing element update and submit that to HCD. So the 3 options that are outlined in the proposed methodology, these are all based on RHNA subcommittee feedback and also feedback from our stakeholders. Each option applies different components in different ways. So SCAG staff wanted to present something, just not more of the same, but we wanted to look at how you can apply different methodologies using different formulas. One option will be selected as the draft RHNA allocation after the public comment period and after it goes through our RHNA subcommittee, CEHD policy committee, and regional council. So even after the public comment period, it still won't be final. And then there'll be an HCD comment review period of 60 days. And after we receive comments from HCD, then we'll go through our committee process for the final RHNA adoption. And that won't take place until early next year. So a brief overview of the three options. I'll start with option 3, which is probably the most straightforward. Option 3 is heavily based on local input. Local input is collected from jurisdictions. SCAG staff went to all SCAG jurisdictions. It's 191 cities and 6 counties. The local input was collected on household growth, population growth, employment growth, and other factors. And these local input is also used for our regional transportation planning. That's our Connect SoCal plan. So it's an integrated process. So option 3 heavily relies on local input as the basis. We'll also add a social equity adjustment to that, and I'll explain in a few slides how that works. And also just I appreciate you taking pictures of these slides, but also you don't have to take pictures of all slides. It is available online right now too if you're trying to save storage space on your phone like I always am. So option 2 is quite different from option 3. Option 2 looks at a jurisdiction share of population, so that's existing population, and then it looks at a jurisdiction share of population within high quality transit areas, or HQTA. HQTAs in our transportation planning are areas that have 15 or more minute headways during peak hours for bus services and for commuter rail, although the 15-minute headway does not apply to commuter rail stations. And then the social equity adjustment is applied to that. So in contrast to option 3, it does not contain local input as the basis for its distribution. Option 1 can be considered as a hybrid of 2 and 3. You have local input as one of the bases. That'll be known as projected need. But then the second part would be known as existing need. Once HCD gives a regional determination, they give us just one number. So it's not separated into projected or existing. But for existing need, we're going to, that is the remainder left over for the region after local input projected need has been applied. So option 1, existing need, is based on a jurisdiction share of population, share of population within an HQTA, and also regional undersupply of permits issued. So in a nutshell, that means that if your jurisdiction has not built a lot of units in comparison to its population, that means that it will receive part of that share. So if you have been issuing a lot of permits, you won't get the share of regional undersupply. And I'll explain a little how that works. So going into the more technical aspects. Option 1, it's a multi-step process, but as I mentioned before, once you determine what existing need is for the region, 70% will be based on a jurisdiction's share of regional population. Then 20% is based on a jurisdiction share of regional population within an HQTA. 10% will be based on the undersupply of regional building activities. So again, if you've been issuing a lot of permits in comparison to your population and the regional average, you won't receive part of that 10%. Similarly, if you don't have an HQTA within your jurisdiction, you don't get part of that 20%. So a jurisdiction's existing need would be based on these three components. The next part is social equity adjustment. So I know many of you have seen this chart before, but for those new to the RHNA cycle, it is something you have to look at graphically to start getting what it's all about. So let's just take an example city, City A. So City A has an existing distribution of 36% for very low income households. Right now, its county level is 25%. So you can see that there's a high concentration of very low income households in City A in comparison to its county. So going back to the objective, the fourth objective for RHNA, which is to ensure that there's not an over-concentration of income groups across all income levels for each county. So you can see City A being a very low income city, having that high concentration, the social equity adjustment means they move towards the county distribution and then beyond that by a certain percentage. So the higher the percentage, that means the more progressive it gets over that planning period. So let's say it's 110% social equity adjustment. That means, or let's say it's 100%. 100% means it goes towards the county distribution. So it'd go from 36% to 25%. 110% means that 10% difference, mathematically it's a little more nuanced, but you multiply it by a ratio of 1.1. So you drop from 25% to 24% at 110%. 175% is much more progressive than 110%, so that's at 17%. So 175% social equity adjustment would mean City A drops from 36% of its total households for very low income being dedicated, it drops to 17% of its RHNA would be for very low income households. And the opposite happens for above moderate. City A is 32% for above moderate. Its county distribution is 44%. So it goes towards that county distribution. 110% means it goes up above that by a small percentage, up to 45%. 175% means it meets that at 53%. So you can see the big differences there. 32%, now it's 53%. And again, this is to ensure there's not an over-concentration of low-income households or all income types across each county. So with that, what SCAG staff is proposing in option 1 is existing housing need. There'd be 110% social equity adjustment. Rather than 4 income categories, SCAG staff is suggesting that the existing need be separated into 3 income categories: very low, low, and moderate. Above moderate would be redistributed based on the current proportions back to the first 3 categories. The reason for this is because existing housing need problems such as overcrowding, cost burdened, other types of problems predominantly affect or have a higher effect on lower income households. So that's the reasoning behind this. The next step is determining projected housing need. So you start off with a jurisdiction share of regional projected household growth. And again, that's based on local input. Next, there's a future vacancy need by owner and renter applied. And so that's a percentage of regional projected household growth. That is a needed component because if it was just 0%, that means there would be 0 units for a new family to move into your city. So you do need a certain percentage of vacant units to sustain household growth. The next part is jurisdiction share of replacement need. Replacement need is for housing units lost due to fire or other natural circumstances. They do need to be replaced in order to maintain household growth. So that's how you get a projected housing need for each jurisdiction. Next would be a 150% social equity adjustment applied. That is a little higher than the 110% for existing need. But then you get 4 income categories. And then you add them together to get a jurisdiction's total RHNA need under option 1. Option 2 is a little more straightforward. You take the regional determination given by HCD. 80% is assigned based on a jurisdiction share of regional population. 20% is based on the jurisdiction share of regional population within an HQTA. So there's no differentiation between existing and projected need. Next, 150% social equity adjustment is applied. Option 3 is similar to calculating projected need from option 1. We start off, instead of household growth, we start off with a share of regional population growth. So this is gathered, we select a horizon year based on the total growth, the total RHNA number that's given by HCD. We compare that to the closest number from our local input to the total growth reported. So whatever is closest to that, that's the horizon year we'll use. So for example, if it was 800,000 units, then we would select the horizon year of 2035, even though RHNA goes to 2030, because 2035's household growth is around 880,000 or so. So we would select that year, and then from that, we would determine each jurisdiction's share of regional population. So similar to option 1's projected need, we do a future vacancy rate, and then we also do a replacement need to get the total housing need under option 3. Option 3 then has a 150% social equity adjustment to get 4 income categories. So a question we get a lot is, how do options affect different jurisdictions? Some jurisdictions have HQTA, some don't have any at all. So the next few slides, I'm just going to cover option 1 briefly, just so you get a sense of how you can get different numbers. But again, come see me during the public comment period or after the public hearing today if you do have technical questions that I haven't covered in this presentation. So City A and City B, you can see City A is urbanized and it's within County X, while City B is a suburban community within a different county, County Y. City A, most of its population is within an HQTA, but City B has no HQTAs. Both have a population of 65,000, but City A has a high concentration of lower-income households compared to its county, while City B has a high concentration of high-income households compared to the county. So first we do existing need. So for this example only, we're just assuming that regional existing need is 250,000. And so 70% is assigned to need based on population share, 20% is based on share of population within an HQTA, and 10% is assigned to based on share of regional permit activity or lack of. So you can see you apply 70% to that total, 20% and 10%. So then you go into share of regional population. Both have the same size, 0.35% share of regional population, so those are the same. But you can see City B doesn't have HQTA, so it gets 0, while City A has HQTA, and it gets 183 in this example. Share of permit activity. City A has not issued a lot of permits in comparison to its population size and the regional average, so it's 280 units assigned, while City B has issued a lot more permits, 30% of the 25,000 it gets for permit activity, so that 10%. So it gets 88 units. So you can see its existing need already has difference. Then you apply the 3 income categories, 110% adjustment divided into 3 income categories. And in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through these slides, but again, this is posted online. So we get the existing need for the 3 income categories. And the next step is projected need. Again, this is based on household growth, future vacancy need, and replacement need. So household growth, this is based on local input. So the local input process for City A, you can see it has 498, but City B reported, based on their reporting, has 1,324 units. Next is future vacancy need. I'm not going to go through this, but it is based on a jurisdiction's breakdown of owner-occupied households and renter-occupied households. The next step is replacement need. This is based on surveys that we sent out to all of our jurisdictions earlier this year. So City B indicated they replaced all units, so they get 0. City A had a few more units they still need to replace, so that's 24. So you add up 3 components together. Then you apply a social equity adjustment. Just calling this out, you can see that City A's very low income category is at 30%. Compared to its county, it has a high concentration of low income households. With 150% social equity adjustment, it gets to 22.9%. So that means that its very low income households is 22.9% of its projected need would be for very low income households. You can see City B's above moderate is currently at 55%. Its county is 41.5%. So it drops its above moderate requirement for projected need in this case is 34.6%. So you can see it drops versus its existing distribution. So you total the 3 and 4 categories together to get the total RHNA units for each jurisdiction. So I'm going to skip over the next few slides, but again, come see me after the presentation, and I can hopefully answer your questions. So a brief comparison of the options. Again, existing need being separate from projected need. Option 1 is the only one that does that, while option 2 and 3 treat the regional determination as one number. For option 1, there are a higher total number of lower income categories because it separates above moderate for existing need into 3 income categories. So it does raise the numbers there. Emphasis on HQTA, option 3 does not, but the other 2 have some component built into that. Accounting for recent building activity, only option 1 does. While all of them do have a social equity adjustment, though option 1 treats existing needs separate from projected need. And finally, local input as a component, both option 1 and 3 do have local input as a basis, whereas option 2 does not use that in its formula. So the full proposed methodology, we have copies here today, along with all of the survey results. They're also posted on our RHNA webpage at www.scag.ca.gov/RHNA. The full survey responses are there as well, and we also have a tool to estimate a jurisdiction's RHNA allocation based on the 3 options. So the next steps, and again, the comments today or during the public comment period are not necessarily, you don't have to limit them to these 3 options. So we're looking for other formulas, other components, any alternative options. SCAG staff will review all comments submitted. So we're at the 3rd of the 4 RHNA public hearings. Next week, we'll have our last one in the evening, 6 to 8 p.m. in the Inland Empire, and we'll also have a Santa Clarita public information session on August 29th. The next steps after the public comment period closes, we have on October 7th, the RHNA subcommittee meeting. We'll be selecting one option based on all of the comments received. The next step is a tentative meeting scheduled for October 21st. The RHNA subcommittee's recommendation will be forwarded to the CEHD meeting. And the next step after that, the Regional Council will review that action on November 7th. After Regional Council approval of one option, SCAG staff will submit that to HCD for their 60-day comment review period right after the November 7th action. So again, public comments, we look forward to your comments today. You can either submit them verbally or you can also submit them written. You can submit them today or also to housing@scag.ca.gov. This is the third out of the fourth presentations, and for the fourth presentation, if you have any good jokes you'd like to share, please also submit them to housing@scag.ca.gov. Make sure you get your comments in by September 13th, and SCAG staff will review all comments and will also post them online. So with that, we'll be more than happy to, or I'm turning this over back to Peggy, Chair Wong, and we look forward to your comments today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayan. Staff has been working very hard on these proposed methodology. Before I move on,